This, it's again completely different. If I'm fishing a crankbait, I want that smaller, longer, softer rod. When I fish a shaky head, I want something that's actually a little faster and stiffer, so extra fast action, so that when, there he goes, he ate it again. So when I'm working it, I have to do very little rod movement in my hand, just like this, just shake it, just little quivers like this, and I can impart that action, and really I'm doing nothing crazy. Here comes one just charging right at it. Boom, ate it. When you pick your baits to do something like shaky head fishing, one thing you want to remember is that scent is critical because it's a slow technique. The baits that I'm using from Power Team, they actually have amino acids built into them and they got garlic. They stink like garlic. My wife hates these baits. My wife's sitting right there actually. And every time I have these baits, she goes in the garage and it's like, oh my God, it stinks like garlic in here. But to me, look how long this fish has had this bait. I've got no hook in the bait. Still got it. Because of the amino acids in the garlic, it'll give for all of us that like to sleep when we fish and sometimes you're not paying attention and you get bit, it gives you a little more time to set the hook because really, this is not live bait and this fish is still holding on to it. It's got that taste. The amino acids, they replicate blood and that's what a fish, when he keys in on it, even though this is a farm-raised fish that has never tasted a minnow before, it's just a natural genetic response to hold on to it. The bait's soft, it smells good, and it tastes good. And that's all it takes to get a fish to hold on to. Like this guy still got it. You can see, oh, there we go, I pulled it away from him. Okay, so that's a shaky head. What about when they get super, super finicky? I mean crazy finicky. For me, that's a drop shot. How many of you fished a drop shot before? Awesome, quite a few of you. Well, drop shotting is a technique where, when I find it really works, when the fish suspend a little bit off bottom, or worse yet, if you're an Erie fisherman or a Simcoe fisherman or anywhere you get moss on the lakes, sometimes what happens is we get a carpet of moss in the water and it sticks right to the bottom. And you can't throw anything like a shaky head or a tube because you've all done it, thrown it out there, hits the bottom, you reel it up and it's got a big mung of snot on your hook. Fish don't eat snot. They don't eat algae. They eat minnows. And if your bait is covered in that stuff, they're not seeing the offering. Well, this is where the drop shot pays off. A drop shot is basically when you put a weight down your line, and up your line you have your hook with a bait. And again, I'm using the same bait I use on the shaky head. This is a hammer shad. So this bait here, I'm going to lift it up. I have it 12 to 14 inches off bottom. The trick with drop shotting is, again, like shaky head, less is more when you're working it. I got a bunch of largemouth sitting right here. I'm going to drop this in there. I'm going to hold this bait. I'm going to shake it like this. And you can see what I'm doing. I'm just quivering the bait. But every once in a while, you want to drop your rod and let the bait fall to the bottom and then twitch it up a couple times and then let it fall back down. It's a very simple way. It looks like an injured or dying. See how that thing falling to the bottom piqued his curiosity? And then I can just twitch it, boom, he ate it. That fish was negative. He had no intention of eating. But because that bait does that slow dying head down flutter, it can't resist. It's an easy meal. It's no different than a whole bunch of us who have a huge meal at home, and then all of a sudden if you were sitting on the couch after eating like a giant steak and a couple baked potatoes and salad and everything, and you don't feel all that well, and someone came beside you and slapped another steak, you'd probably say, no, I don't want it. But if that person slaps a bowl of M&Ms beside you, you're probably going to pick at a few of them. Drop shotting is like giving a bass M&Ms. It's simple, it's easy, it's a quick meal. It's something that even when they're negative and they're not feeling that well, they're going to take advantage of because it's not every day a bait's going to fall on your nose and just be available to you. He's still got this thing in his mouth, by the way. Like this fish does not want to let go of it. So the two areas I like to use drop shotting, let me see if I can get this fish off. Let go, thank you. The two areas I like to use drop shotting. When I'm fishing shallow, I work drop shot a little bit differently than I do when I'm fishing deep. Shallow fishing, I cast it out far away from the boat because, let's face it, we're shallow. And you have to because it's clear. Oh, you just hammered that thing. I just felt that. So, cast it out, and if I can get this fish to let it go, let it go. All right. When I work it like a walking motion. So I'll actually walk it and then drop my rod tip every so often, and then twitch, 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 drop my rod tip. It's a simple way to work a bait, and I can cover water while doing it. You see that fish turn around. If I start shaking this thing, shake it, shake it, shake it, shake it, shake it, drop it, and all of a sudden he's got this interest in it. Pop, 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 and drop. Okay, here comes another one. Now he's mad. He's mad. Boom, eats it. I'm covering water when I'm working shallow. I'm always getting it away from the boat, and I'm bringing it back towards me. Well, how about when I'm working deep, straight up and down? In 30, 40 feet of water, it's a deadly technique, and and I fish off my sonar. So I'll be looking at my hummingbird and I'll be watching them. This little guy coming at it. What I can do is I can actually let this thing drop. See, this guy just ate my weight. He's not that bright. There we go. All right, so I can fish it up and down and use very little rod movement to get the fish to react to it. But I'm using my graph in a deep water situation. So I'm not worried about casting far away from the boat. I'm actually working straight up and down and shaking the bait and letting it fall. But the reality is in drop shotting, the less you do, the more it is sometimes. Oh my God, let go of it, dude. Buddy, come on. The less you do, the better it is. Hanging the bait naturally and then dropping it down. He ate the weight again. Oh, he's a genius, this one. Hey, over here. There's food right in front of you. Let's see if he goes after it. But you can see what I'm doing. My rod movement is very short, very curse, and that fall. Because the bait's neutrally buoyant, it falls down like an injured or dying minnow. Let go of that weight. He likes the weight. Oh, there he goes. So when I'm straight up and down deep water, very little twitches, and then dropping the rod tip, letting that slack line, let that bait fall to the bottom, and then twitch it back up again.
Derose.
Oh, look at this guy. All right, so that's the drop shot. Now, anytime I talk about setups for all this stuff, I'm gonna go through one more bait, because and then I'm gonna show you some comparisons between rods, because it's really important to understand. The fact of the matter is, if you go to any of these tackle stores around here, you look at them, you're gonna look at them, you're gonna say, why the heck is there 300 rods in this place? And it's not just different manufacturers that manufacture rods. Every manufacturer manufactures different styles of rods. And the reason they do is because every technique is different. If you're fishing in heavy cover, you need a stiffer rod. If you're fishing in open water for smaller fish, you want a lighter, more flexible rod. It's a very simple process, but to understand it will help you as a consumer not make the wrong purchase for the wrong thing. Because I don't care who you are and how much money you have, nobody likes buying a rod or a reel or a bait and going out and using it and having no success with it. You want it to work. You want it to be as efficient as possible. So the last thing I'm going to talk about is flipping. And how many largemouth people out here? Just a few? A few more than I thought for this region. There's phenomenal largemouth fishing in this region. The problem with this region is, like say you fish Chippewa or the Niagara River for largemouth, there's a lot of cover to contend with. It's heavy cover. It's not a little bit of cover. There's current, there's trees, there's reeds, there's kind of all kinds of stuff that you can get yourself into trouble with. And for me, I like to go right into the thick of the cover because that's where the fish live. The problem is with a flipping jig, which is probably the #1 bait to use for largemouth, for big largemouth, it doesn't have a closed up hook. It's susceptible to snags and gathering weeds and getting locked up in a tree. So I try to use something that's a little different. And here's another bait that I like to use. It's from Power Team as well. It's called a Texas rig jig. But the difference is I have it rigged on the Freedom Lures jig head. And this jig head is actually designed so that you can throw it into the heaviest of covers and work it exactly like a jig. So basically it's a Texas rig soft plastic, like you would a craw or a worm. You can make it completely weedless. But when you fire it out there, you can see with a bait like this. Again, I talked about neutral buoyancy in baits. I'll hop this up on that rock there, right there. The claws go up in the defensive position on the bait. The throat skirt starts to spread ever so slowly, and every little bit of movement. So if you're fishing current situations, that bait will sit there and actually move like it's alive in the water, okay? Anytime you're working, oh, look at the dumb one's there. Look at the dumb one, it's right here. This guy is really, he's got some issues here, anger issues. Anytime you work a bait like this, I talk about rod position when I was cranking and my rod's always down. When I'm flipping the jig, oops, he ate it. It's always up. My rod is always in that 9 to 11 o'clock position. So I work a bait, he ate it again. Oh, really, dude? I'm trying to talk to the people here. All right, let's see if he goes after it. Okay, so my rod's in the 9 to 11 o'clock position. The reason I do that is because my bait's sitting on the bottom and I'm working it and I want to have that bait inching along the bottom just like I had the shaky head doing it. There's another one just staring right at it. So when I work my bait, my rod's up here. The reason I need a different rod than when I'm cranking is a very simple reason. Oh boy, I got an angry one looking at it. The reason it's different is the fact that when I'm cranking, my rod is down, my line's always tight, but when I work a jig, you can see there's always a little bit of a bow in my line. So I need that stiffer, because when someone grabs it like that, I can reel down and set the hook, and I can get a fish with very little movement. Now I want to show you the difference between these two. Where's my crankbait rod? All right, this is a cranking rod, this is a flipping rod. These are both Relatively the same length. 7.6, 7.5.
One piece on, one piece on.
They're both rated medium heavy power, but they're built completely differently, and I'll show you how. All right, I need my volunteer, because this man knows how to not get hooked. That one's for you. Got it? Okay, now I'm going to do this left-handed. Oh, tangled around the tip. 1 second here. Of course you got tangled. Where are you tangled? You spin this around a couple times.
Free fishing rod or read
Really?
Oh, what type?
All right.
for kids.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How does that even happen? I'd like to know. All right.
Not funny.
So here's my other one. So left-handed pitch. If I hurt you in the eye, don't blame me. All right. Flipping stick, cranking rod. Both in that 7'6" range. Both medium heavy power. Why are they different? All right, you good to go? I'm not going to send you to the hospital anytime soon? Positive about that? He's checking now real good. He doesn't like the look of that big hook either. All right. Okay. Cranking rod, flipping stick. If I have to set the hook on a cranking rod, I pull and that whole rod will give in. So he can pull his hand down, like a fish. The rod is going to absorb all the shock, right? It's easy to pull down, no problems. Flipping stick, locked. Look at the difference, okay? One is bending like almost 2.5 times more than the other. The reason being is because this rod is designed for reaction baits, baits that are always moving, baits that a fish is going to take a swipe at and you want them to hook up. And when they're baits that typically when a fish jumps, the rod's going to absorb the shock